Hello there, folks. How are we? So we are back for the fifth session as we deep dive into that incredible classic Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Everyone on the call here live on Zoom. We are just fans of Napoleon Hill's work. We're not presenting ourselves as experts, although we do have some level of expertise, obviously having read it many, many times, some of us, and we've been immersed in applying the principles that are in this book and others over the last 6 or 7 years, collaboratively together in a mastermind environment. And many of the people on the call have been reading the book for decades prior to that and applying it in their own lives. And they might share as they jump on it and share their thoughts as we go through this. So you may remember, if you've seen this before, you could be watching this on YouTube. So as you roll along with us, please put any comments, thoughts in the comment section. There's also likely a link below here if you're seeing this, if it's going live on the platform you're watching it on. So if you're on Facebook, maybe you're in our private Facebook group, you are able to click on the link and join us here in Zoom if you wish, and share right here and have it recorded and sent out into the ether. And so with that being said, my name is Lloyd. I'm here in Ireland, on the west coast, or sorry, the east coast of Ireland. And we have people on the call from all over. So I'm going to just ask everybody to just briefly unmute yourself. Let us know, where are you watching from? So I'm going to start with you, Ron, just very briefly. Where are you?
I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and at the moment I'm sitting in England enjoying the English weather. So yeah, thanks a lot, Lloyd.
Nice one. Kasia, where are you at?
Kasia Katarzyna Sochacka. I am in Yakima Valley, Washington State, originally from Poland, from a beautiful town, Kielce.
Lovely. Wolfgang.
I am from Vienna and I'm living in Serbia in the mountains.
Beautiful. Wanda.
I am in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Nice, nice. Michael, where are you at?
Hi, I'm from Dublin, Ireland.
Beautiful. And over to you, Mark.
I am from the west coast of Canada in British Columbia, in this wonderful little city known as Kamloops, BC.
Beautiful. So with that being said, as you can hear, we're an eclectic bunch from all over the place. And we've been masterminding together, some of us for 6, almost 7 years now. And so what we're going to be doing in this mastermind today is just very simply is we're going to be delving into the book itself. We're going to just share our thoughts and insights on little segments of the book that stand out for us. So Mark is going to share screen. He's going to, today we're focused on the 6 steps to riches. And what does that mean? We're going to likely share some of our experiences, and we may move on from that point depending on what time we have left up until the top of the hour. So again, you are welcome to join us. Please do comment, as this is live on Facebook. We will try and answer, in fact, we will answer every comment that you put there. So do also let us know where you're watching from, and let's create a little bit of fun around this. So over to you, Mark. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd. Let's start with the mastermind principles first, and then we can jump right into it today, because I'd like to be a little concise. Now, everybody, we're just going to go through and do a round robin event. My screen's just adjusting here, so give me a quick moment. Okay. And Ron, if you don't mind kicking us off, and then it'll go Wolfgang, Wanda, Kasia, Michael, Lloyd, and then back to me. You're muted, Ron.
Oh, there we are. I release myself from the mastermind because I'm stronger when I have others to help me.
I believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond my own.
I understand. I understand that I will more easily create positive results in my life when I am open to looking at myself, my problems, and opportunities from another's point of view.
Decide,
Go ahead, Kasia, sorry.
I decide to release my desire totally in trust to the mastermind, and I am open to accepting new possibilities.
I
Wonderful.
forgive myself for mistakes I've made. I also forgive others who've hurt me in the past so I can move into the future with a clean slate.
And Michael, please go ahead.
I ask the mastermind to hear what I really want, my goals, my dreams, my desires. And I hear my mastermind partner supporting me in my fulfillment.
Beautiful. I accept. I know, relax, and accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to my every need. And I am grateful knowing this is so. Back to you, Ron.
Okay. I have a covenant in which I agree to the mastermind shall supply me with an abundance of all things necessary to live the successful and happy life.
I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to the world and my fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the higher example for the others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will.
I go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy.
Beautiful. Kasia, if you could read the first line of the mission statement, that'd be great. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Noble Goldman International is a conscious, aware, and engaged global community of abundance and freedom creators.
Our mission is to create 1 million millionaires who are free from the time for money paradigm. We focus on creating multiple streams of income through masterminding, team building, and the effective utilization of the internet-based platforms.
Beautiful. Michael, you get the last paragraph. You're muted. There you go.
The mastermind becomes the opportunity for self-mastery with the self-transcendent shift from the me to the we to the us occurs. As congruence and engagement increases, the world's consciousness is then raised one meaningful and inspired relationship at a time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Thank you all. So today we have the 6 steps to riches. We recapped this quite extensively over the last couple of weeks, so I want to skip past this, but I just wanted to use this as a reminder specifically about what we're talking about here. And this is converting our desire for riches into a definitive plan to acquire those riches that that we persist in, and we do not recognize failure until we achieve that objective. And we've talked about that quite extensively for the last 2 weeks. So I wanted to go on to the first step of the 6 steps and to hopefully get through all 6 steps today. And I'd love to hear each of your perspectives on this. And what ideally we're looking for is obviously not just repeating the words in the chapter, but how you've applied this to your own life and what insights you might have had through those experiences, what challenges you might have had to overcome, and specifically, you know, what really works well for you in each of these different 6 areas. So, so the first step is, and I'll just read it out and then you guys can, and then we can discuss it. So fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. There is a psychological reason for definitiveness, which will be described in subsequent chapters. So I'm curious, who's got some insight that they'd like to share related to this first step? Because obviously riches is just not just money, but being very definitive in setting your goal? Please, Ron, jump in there.
Mark, yes. So since I've been doing Noble Goldman and learning through the processes, the first thing I've done, I've created my little book here. I don't know if you can see it, but every day I've put my goals on it in there, and every day I increase that goals, and I've got a specific time and a specific date for what I want to achieve. And one of the things is what I've put in is I wanted to sell my car as an example, and I put a specific date in to sell my car, and it was 2 weeks later I got a buyer for my car. So I'm using that as something I can share, but I've also got certain goals which I put a specific date and time in when I want to achieve it. So on the first step, I put in the amount what I want and going for what I want. And I just want to elaborate a little bit on there. When I joined Noble Goldman, and what was her name? Val. And when we done the affirmations, says, I will. She says, why don't you just change it to I am? And since I changed that to I am, it makes it more real. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, great points. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have something they'd like to share? I'd like to go last. So I give you everybody else the opportunity to share your perspective.
Yeah, I'm learning. I need to get back into like doing affirmations and writing my goal. Like, so one of the things is I realize I haven't done certain goal things in Noble Goldman. So that's my focus now, is to write my vision and my goals and keep myself accountable by filling out the scoreboard.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. What do you think the psychological reason, I'm just putting this out to everybody, what do you think the psychological reason is for definitiveness of purpose? Like, why is it important that you're specific psychologically?
We need like a direction to where we need to go, like set our mind, I want to be a millionaire. You need to have that set out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I just want to say,
Oh,
sorry. I wanted to say that I think the reason for a definite date is because otherwise it remains psychologically in the mind as someday. And there is no such day as someday. And then it also, I would think, impacts whatever plan occurs as a result of the desired amount and all of the action steps required in that plan. It's all energized and motivated partly by the date. If there's no date, then there's no plan.
Yeah. I have so much to add here, but I'm just chomping at the bit, so I'm just going to zip it and pass it to Wolfgang. Please, Wolfgang, go for it.
I want to share a practical example. Last year, I was about to go to Mumbai, and I had a very clear amount what I needed to go there. And I expressed it in, it's exactly one client I wanted to, I didn't want to have the money just merely, but in a form of a client. And the interesting thing was that exactly this client showed up and all the cost was paid. And it was dedicated to a time. It was a clear amount. And what I also saw is I could have said twice as much, then would have had more. But the universe literally creates exactly that what we ask for. And that was one, this was also dedicated to a purpose. So it wasn't like I want to have this until then somehow, but it was really like creating that for realizing something. And that was a very short term. That was within a month to realize that. So it doesn't matter how much time, it doesn't matter the amount. This definiteness is listened by the universe, and it brings exactly that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Wolfgang. That's a beautiful example of the power of this intention and definitiveness in terms of the full manifestation, the full cycle of it. So I think all the masters talk about this, that experience, right? Everybody has had that. So anybody else want to share before I jump in there? Mr. Chambers, did you want to add anything on your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, I was so specific about the woman that I wanted to meet that I did it down to the blood type. So, and so now what was interesting about it was a couple of things that I wasn't specific on, and you get exactly what you asked for, which was kind of funny. And obviously, I'm sort of slight tongue in cheek there, but the reality is that be very, very careful what you say that you want and what you affirm, because you might get it. So equally, if we are affirming things that are not what we want, we in fact have we have too much of what we don't want. We actually get overwhelmed by the amount of not want that we have, because that's what we're focused on. So I think the primary thing here is about where you put your attention. And yes, of course, you want to be specific, because if you say, I want to be wealthy, well, as Wanda said, when? So, for example, you might have an insurance policy on your life, and you might die, and then your family become wealthy as a result of you dying. So you're wealthy, but not while you're alive. So like, you have to be very careful about how you frame things, and be aware that you might get exactly what you asked for. So I guess just that's the basics of it. If you could say, I want to have a good job, I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, is a good job according to who? I remember years ago, my father has this friend of his who's a lawyer, and all his kids, did really well in school, and there was regular comparisons being thrown about the dinner table when I was a teenager, about these other children, right? And one of them had got a job for 100,000 euros, like 20 plus years ago. And my father had said to his friends, they're doing pretty well. That's a pretty good job. He's like, no, it's not. And anything less than 250 is unacceptable for my children. So the expectation of that individual was completely different from what a good job is. So it's important to be aware of what it is that you want, get clear on what it is, communicate it effectively, have a time frame, and don't shortchange yourself. Yeah, that's what comes up for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Lloyd. That's some real wisdom there. I want to come back to some of that in a moment, but Kasia, you're patiently waiting, so go ahead.
Well, I have a few thoughts, but now I will respond to what you just said, Lloyd. And I think one thing is about how much money somebody can make, and it might mean nothing. My application is, what are you going to create with the money? What kind of effect for your family and the world, and what kind of meaning are you going to translate into the numbers that you make? That's I think more important than just the number game. People are making lots of money and wasting lots of money. And I also wanted to go back to the when and why to have your dreams or your money coming to your plate. It's basically, I can compare that situation to like when you go to the restaurant. Obviously you go there for the reason, right? Basically you are hungry, or you are going to celebrate something, So you have 2 reasons to go to a restaurant, and when you place the order, when the waiter come over to your table, you basically want that food as soon as possible because you are hungry and you want to celebrate. So it's the same like with the dreams, that you have to have that vision. When do you need it? Because again, you need to create something more, something further. So when you are fed, and when you are happy after you celebrate, you are more open to do more things that they are going to make your next day or lifetime, more meaningful. So setting up dates and goals and numbers and making things possible means order those things as soon as possible, or perhaps now. Thank you.
Excellent. I think everybody's had a chance to speak. So I just want to add a couple of things. The first thing here is this definitive exact amount that it's talking about here, and the importance of specificity, like being extremely specific, is absolutely critical because of what Mr. Chambers and really everybody else said here on the call. Because if you're not specific about the riches, and I'm talking about all the different aspects that you want in terms of riches, because you can have money, but if you don't have your health, you're going to end up spending all your money with, on your health. So you want to be healthy, wealthy, wise, in good, solid relationships. You want your kids to be thriving. So there's a lot to being specific here that is more than just money per se, although money is important. Okay. So I'm not trying to discount that, but I want to encourage everybody listening to be extraordinarily specific, because if you're not explicit, you may find yourself getting what you want, but being unhappy with it. So that's the first thing, right? And so be explicit. And also Lloyd, you brought up a really important thing too, which is self-limiting beliefs, right? It's some people might say, oh, okay, I want to make whatever, $250,000 a year, but not recognizing that it takes the same amount of effort to make 250,000 as it does to make 250 million a year. Right? So if we're talking about money, it's the same amount of effort. You still only have 24 hours in a day, right? You can only do the same a certain amount of activities, but the point is that what activities are you doing is going to be based on what you specify. Because to make $250,000 a year, you're going to be doing something completely different than if you're making $250 million a year. Right? It's 2 totally different strategies, but both of those people exist. Right? There's people out there right now making 250 million a year. There's other ones that are making 250,000. Okay? So the point is not to limit yourself, but also I'm not encouraging anybody, like if 250,000 is all you need, then there's nothing wrong with that, because you may have other priorities, family, relationships, travel, other things might be more important than career. So the point is what do you define as being rich, and be specific, and recognize, and Wolfgang, you brought this up earlier too, is that depending on what you tap into, it's effortless either way. Ultimately, when you actually get what you want, it's effortless. It might take effort to get there. It might take work. It might take effort to transmute yourself or translate yourself from the current version of yourself into that future version of yourself. But that future version of yourself that's making the 250,000 or the 250 million is just waking up in the morning and doing the same routine that you're doing right now, maybe just in a slightly different way to get a slightly different result. Right? So recognizing that. Now, the other thing too, and because I've seen so many people struggle with this first one here, it's ridiculous. And the best analogy I've ever been able to come up with is if I say to everybody, hey, everybody, we're going on vacation. What's the next question that you're going to ask me?
Where?
When?
Exactly. You want to know where we're going. You want to know when we're going to get there. You're thinking of, how am I going to book my flights? Where am I going to stay in the hotel? What food are we going to be eating? What kind of events and activities are going on at that location when we get to that spot? Are we having a big party? Are we all coming together and doing some breathing with Wolfgang again? Right? But
or is it a conference for a product, or
Yeah, exactly. Is it an entrepreneurial conference, or are we going to a luau? Are we surfing on a beach? Are we jumping out of airplanes? Like, what are we doing here? Right? So the universe, like this space-time field that you're experiencing, and what I think Napoleon Hill is challenging us to do in this first section is be specific. We're going to Mexico. We're going to skydive. We're going to go and, go to the Mayan Riviera, and we are going to skydive over top of the pyramids, down there. Right. And then we're going to go for an adventure in the jungle, and we're going to go and see all the wildlife. And we're going to have a conference as well. And we're going to do some surfing and scuba diving. So the point is that it's very specific what I just described to you. So now I've painted a picture in your mind of the experience that we're going to have. And that's what you have to do with your life. Fundamentally, right? You've got to paint that picture and be specific. What is it that you want? And be direct, clear, and concise, because if you're not, and you leave gray areas around the edges, and I've done this a lot, if you leave the gray gets often filled in with the subconscious stuff that you don't want. Okay, so anyways, that's my thoughts on this first section. Michael, go ahead, and then we'll go on to the second one.
Yeah, so like I've been applying for jobs, and now I have a job. I'm going to be a cinema host in Odeon Cinemas in Ireland. So earlier in the year, I said I wanted to earn like 20K, and so that's actually come true in a different way than I thought it would. So like, yeah, these things take time to actualize.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it can be effortless too. I just want you to know it is possible for it to be effortless. And that's just usually about removing all of the blocks. But I know Wolfgang experienced that because he's done a lot of work. But just moving on, let's go into the second one. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Who's got any insights on this that they'd like to share? Mr. Chambers, go ahead.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite bit. If like everything we do, the way we spend our day is about choices. Obviously, you got habits that make the choice without us being consciously aware of it. But we do have choices. So in the evening time, we can choose to watch Netflix, or we can choose to educate ourselves. In the morning, we can choose to get up the last possible moment and spend the morning whinging about things, or we can get up a little bit earlier and meditate and get ourselves into a good vibration. So there's always choices. And so when it comes to achieving something spectacular and something specific, there's going to be some requirements to that. So, it might be a case of I like watching sports, but sports are essentially a way of filling time, unless you work in sports, which just slightly different. But for most people that use it as a hobby, it's just something to engage your mind with when you're not at work, for the most part. And so could I just not watch that TV show of an evening? Or could I, move some things around to restructure my life so that I'm spend the majority of my time focused on this very thing? So you need to know what you're willing to give up. Now, please don't give up your family, okay, because they're probably the ones you're doing it for in the first place. But at the same time, there are definitely things that you can put aside for a period of time. So I do remember years ago, I was building a business, and I went to a training, and the leader that was on stage at the time, he said, look, I sat down with my wife and I said, look, here's the goal. This is what I want to achieve. But in order for me to achieve that for the next 6 months, I'm not going to be around as often. When you're expecting to sit down for dinner and you're expecting me to be there, I'm not going to be there. So the question I want to ask you is, do you trust me? Because for the next 6 months, I'm going to be working 20 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week for 6 months. But I know what I'm doing and I have a plan, and I'm going to be following this action plan. And that's my sacrifice. So I need to know, are you going to be there to support me during this time? Because I'm not going to be able to turn up for you the way I normally do. And that really stood with me. All right, now it's probably best not to ask that question from someone who's already struggling in their own life, because the answer will likely be no, and that's not going to serve anyone. But you got to understand and be aware of what people can manage around you, and there's going to be a level of stress, additional stress potentially on your time, potentially, and you need to know how you can spread that. And it really comes down to what you're willing to change in order to move in that direction. So that's just what comes up for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Lloyd. Yeah, I just wanted to add, and just before I go to you, Ron, is the can it be effortless? Does it have to be hard? Is it being hard an actual one of those self-limiting beliefs as well? I just determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money that you desire. I know there's a huge focus on hustle culture, and there's this huge focus right now on, overcoming adversity, and I'm all for it for those that want to challenge themselves and stretch and grow. I'm just also curious is if it can be effortless, is that a possibility that you're accepting into this paradigm as well? But Mr. Reese, go ahead. Ron, please.
Mark, 100%. So you just touched on the point what I wanted to say, because at the end of the day is what am I going to give in return? And sometimes of being in the real estate is if I work with agents who's got the same mindset as me, and I can help them grow through knowledge, and they can give me knowledge, and we can share deals and working with each other. Like, to give you an example, I'm sitting in the UK, I'm providing information to people in South Africa, and they're doing deals while I'm sharing through it to get to my common goal. So therefore, I feel there's an opportunity, if you know what your strengths and weaknesses, and help other people to find out what their strengths and weaknesses to leverage. And that's how where I work, is leverage each other's skill sets to put less effort in, but grow more. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, leveraging is a phenomenal example of that. It's like, if the other analogy I love using is, if you're the Pharaoh in Egypt, does it make sense to pick up a chisel and a hammer to build the pyramids, right? Probably not. It probably makes more sense to start to work with other people like what you're describing, Ron, right? To get the pyramids built. But anyways, Wanda, please, what's your insights you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just found something in the book that I think speaks to some of what was talked about, and that's the hard piece of it. And so he says, you know, at the beginning of the last paragraph on on page 28, he says the steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. But doesn't he say something about you have to know what you're going to give? So anyhow, I'm a little bit confused on that, but he says, to apply them calls for no great amount of education. But the successful application of these 6 steps does call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. So it's interesting that he said, and so I think it's terminology here. This is what's coming to me in the moment. It's about the terminology. So we think, you know, well, we give something, then we think, oh, we're sacrificing something like time, as an example. And he's saying there is no sacrifice.
Yes.
And, you know, the hard, you know, you got to work hard, part of it as well. So it's, you know, it's about the meaning that we give to words as well as the choice of words, I think. And it could be hard, you know, if that's what you believe, it could be hard. So.
And it could be effortless.
Yes, I agree. And, you know, what comes to my mind is something that happened for me recently where I was thinking about, well, if there was an organization that was like this, and I described it in my mind and the type of people that would work there, that would be the place I would love to be. I didn't think it existed, but how it showed up in my life was effortlessness. I could have began a search. Oh, where is this place? I could have, you know, done research. I could have talked to people. I could have made it hard. So that's a really interesting experience. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting to mention for everyone. That he says that the steps do not require hard labor and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. Thank you for bringing up that point, Wanda. Thank you. That was great contribution. Michael, you're next. What are your thoughts on this?
So my thought is back to the job hunting. Like it got exciting because I was like, wow, like, you know, I knew I was going to get a job, so I didn't even think about it being hard anymore. It was just next, you know, you just get through it, like, you know, just do what you need to do, and then I landed the job I wanted. So things don't have to be hard when you just want it. You know, you get excited. It's like, you know, watching a movie. You're happy because you know that you know that you're going to get to the end of the movie. You're going to be happy with whatever happens.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Michael. Life's a movie.
Yeah, and what character do you want to play? Is really what this chapter is all about, is defining the character in your movie. You know,
yes.
Yeah, and then more importantly too, I just want to add too, what I love is what's the soundtrack to the movie of your life, because the soundtrack is where the fun happens, right? So, anyways. Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chambers, you want to add some more? Please go ahead.
Yeah, just really briefly, I just realized I completely missed something incredibly valuable that somehow passed me by. But I'm very grateful, Wanda, that you pointed it out, or I'm not sure exactly what you said that brought it up for me, but I realized something. What you intend to give in return for the money, when I remember back to when I was studying this book previously, is the actual service you intend to give, and is not the sacrifice, which totally changes the meaning of this altogether. You know, it's like, so the market must I mean, you know, if you got something that you're marketing, right? Whether it's your services, whether it's a physical product, whether it's a relationship via coaching or one-on-one coaching or whatever, it requires you to give more in return than the amount, the physical, the financial amount that you receive in return. And you know, that's, I think, what's being alluded to here, from my understanding at least. And it's also asking, are you willing to move into service to others rather than service to self? Which, when somebody reads a title like Think and Grow Rich, they might assume that this is in service to self. But in fact, in order for these 6 steps to work, it must be service to others, because who else are you going to interact with in order to provide that in the first place? So yeah, thank you everybody for this, for the penny drop here. I really appreciate that. And
Absolutely.
Thumbs up here.
Absolutely. Wolfgang, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to bring 2 examples. The one example was with this one client last year. It was effortless and joyful because of how the sessions were coming and being. It was just joy. So it was effort in terms of the time and in terms of providing service, but it was joyful. So it seemed like effortless in doing the is people show up currently, they want to be in the breathing, and there is a weekly breathing group, and there is a way of actually enrolling people. And in the goal of reaching the amount of people, it's not about me, and it's not I'm doing the work. It's about to give an opportunity for other people to enroll and to participate in the financial reward and everything, but it can be effortless, and people show up currently by themselves. So somehow when we give something, it doesn't necessarily mean that what you said, that we need to look for them. They can show up in our lives. And what you, Ron, said, there is a collaboration, there is a more possibility that we can add service actually in a way that we don't have to add time. Because more or less in my service, what I provide in the group, if there is 5 people or if there is 50 people, there is a different approach, but from the amount of people, it doesn't take more time. So it can be very effortless even to scale up massively, because the amount of time is there, the service is there, and if there is more people, so it can be very effortless. And it's very important for me that the topic is there, because I would have seen it needs to be more work and more time. And actually exactly what you read, Wanda, it is not more time, it's effortless. And to really have the mindset that it does not, because I'm coming from a place where it needs to be hard. If it's not hard, you shouldn't even eat so much and all this stuff. So there is really a deep thinking inside, and thank you for the topic today.
Yeah, really great points. Really great points, everybody. What I wanted to add here is this chapter, specifically this particular second step, is really challenging us to transcend the worker's mentality, right? The idea that you are exchanging time for money. And for those that are a part of this community that are also part of Noble Goldman will know that we spend a lot of time in distinguishing the difference between M1 strategies or money strategies where you're trading your time for money, and M2 where you're learning to invest money, and M3 where you're learning to invest time to make money. But the key differentiator, right, in that is like we could talk about an author, right, or an entertainer, or anybody who creates some sort of invention. My great grandfather made the modern hockey skate. Okay, he invented it, and you know, you can still find tack skates today, right? CCM Bauer tack skates. But anyways, the point is that it was effortless. He's been long since passed, you know, for, you know, he lived 100 years ago, you know, but his skates still exist in the world. People are still skating around at the Olympics, playing hockey and doing everything else on his invention. So it's effortless, right? And the same is true for, say, Bob Marley. You know, he wrote some incredible songs, right? Those songs are broadcast all over the world. He passed away before the internet existed, and yet all of us listen to his music online all the time. It's effortless for him. There's no work involved, you know, and all these great authors, we could go back and look at all of these authors that have wrote books hundreds of years ago, or even the legacy of the pharaohs that we were talking about earlier, that they made those pyramids, right? It's effortless now, right? In retrospect. So the point is challenging your thinking to think, what service, what do you desire to exchange for that money? And it can be effortless. And I would, you know, there's another great book that I love that's The Science of Getting Rich. And Wallace D. Wattles talks in there about it in terms of being a person with advancing man consciousness. And I think this is what Napoleon Hill is talking about. It's that you're creating value in other people's lives and you're improving the quality of their life in a way that's meaningful to them. And as a result, you are receiving a remuneration for that value exchange. And so just recognizing that the objective here, when it comes to the second step, is you are exchanging a value add in exchange for the riches that you desire. Take care, Wolfgang. Thank you for being here today. And so the question you want to be asking yourself is, how are you adding value to the situation? How are you improving the quality of the lives of the people that you're touching? And through that exchange, how are you being remunerated for it? How are you being compensated for that effort? And are you leaving them with an impression of increase, like they got more value from the exchange with you than what you received in return? And if you are giving more value than you're receiving, within reason, it has to be a healthy balance, but if you're leaving people with an impression of increase, then you will thrive, right? And we've all experienced this. You go around your city, you find your favorite restaurant, and when you find that favorite restaurant that you've been to, where the quality of the food is fantastic in relation to, you know, how much money you're paying for the dining experience, you go to that restaurant repeatedly over and over and over again. It could be your favorite pizza place or fast food place or, you know, fine dining, whatever it is. But as soon as you find an impression of increase, you go back to that place. And what I'm challenging everybody to do here when you're thinking about what you intend to give is intend to be a person who gives more value than you receive. Not unreasonable imbalance, but leave everybody with an impression of increase. Ron, you want to add something, please?
Mark, you just touched on something which I'd like to share, is exactly what you were saying. Is I was posting stuff on social media, and a lady following me in 2016. And she asked me every now and then for a bit of advice, and I just gave her advice. And all of a sudden, she says, "Can you help me to get a mortgage?" I said, "Yes." I organized her a mortgage. She says, "Can you find my house?" I haven't met the woman, but I've done everything over the internet, and I found a house for her, and I organized the mortgage, and she wants to give me a brother and a sister. By giving back, you'll receive, and exactly what you just said. If you know how to provide testimonials that people can trust in you, that's how you're going to grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not just what you intend to give, but how you intend to give it is super important as well. We're coming up on the top of the hour, but I think we have enough to do the third step, or the third step to riches, which is a definitive date that you intend to possess the money that you desire. I'm curious, why is a date so important? Anybody got any perspective they'd like to share on why a date is an important part of this equation?
A date and a time lets you know where you're going and when you got to be there, like, so you can focus on it. I think what it does is it sets it in stone, or knows our subconscious this is what's gonna happen, so it can focus on it and help us get there quicker.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chambers, what's your perspective on this?
You nearly called me Mr. Trigger.
No, I said Mr. Chambers.
Well, it sounded like, no, all jokes aside.
Did I trigger you? Did I trigger you?
The thing is that, imagine if the train, right, you will go to get the train and you don't know what time the train's coming at. I mean, that could be a very long wait. And I think that it's important to understand, okay, let me set a time on when I want this to happen, because it's easier for your brain, your mind, to create the urgency required to take the actions that are associated with and deliver the value that's associated with the return in financial compensation for the thing that you're given, and it creates some immediacy.
I think, urgency is a great point. That's a phenomenal point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kasia, please go ahead.
I think that the most simple answer to this, if you are setting up the date, you are transferring the vision to the reality from, just broadcasting the vision, just casting the vision to the actual happening. And, it's just like translation. From when you translate from Polish to English to understand what the heck is going on in that another language, it gets you closer to the reality of your dreams coming true. Thank you. And I have to go, so see you next week.
Sounds great. Fantastic, Kasia. Thank you for being here. Take care. Wanda, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's like the first step about the money, the specific amount of money. So what is a whole lot of money? What is that? Nobody understands that. And so certainly, what does he use the word? Psychologically, it's really important to have a specified amount of money. And I think it's for that reason. The universe is going to return to you what you ask for. So the universe cannot return a whole lot of money because that's not understood. In the same way that if there's no date, then there's no date. And I think, like, using the analogy of a trip, I think you were the one, Mark, that mentioned that earlier. Well, let's say we plan this trip. We know where we're going, what it's all going to be about and why we're going, but there's no date. But guess what? It's not going to happen.
Bingo.
And I think that is exactly how it is in this situation. No date, it's not going to happen.
And if you've ever planned a trip and didn't set a date on it, how frustrating was that experience? But as soon as you put a date on it, now you could book flights, you can book hotel rooms, those definitive plans become the opportunity for definitive plans manifest, right? Without the date, there's no definitive plans capable of being made, right? So I think the date part of it is critical. And the other thing I just wanted to add, and then Ron, I'll come back to you on this, is there's a fear factor part of it, right? There's a self-limiting belief to putting a date on it that if I set this date and then it doesn't come, then what? Am I a failure? Right? And then that whole fear of failure or fear of success, either which way, fear can creep into the equation, right? By you putting a date on it. But that, again, is another growth-based opportunity, because it doesn't mean if you don't hit a given date or target, you can't readjust the date or target and double down on the activity that you're doing. But by you setting a date, it forces you into action and it forces you into moving the ball forward. But if you never set the date, then there's no action. Right. So it really, the point that I'm really trying to highlight here is I think the date is important because it forces what Mr. Chambers talked about, which is an action-oriented outcome. It also forces you to play a finite game, meaning you're going to win or you're going to lose. And by setting yourself up for that, you either win or you learn. Right? There is no loss. And it gives you an opportunity to frame that correct mindset in order for you to actually get what it is that you want eventually anyway. So anyways, my point is the date. I can't agree more with everything that you guys are saying. The date is fundamental to the entire process. Ron, please go ahead.
So I just want to start with something light. It says, a dream without a goal is only a dream. So I'll say is, if you want to reach your goal, you have to have a specific time. And in that specific time, you have to have an affirmation on a daily basis and be mentioned in your affirmations how you're going to get there. Because as you said, I mean, we're all going to New York. But on the way to New York, all of a sudden there's Disneyland. And we forget about your goal going to New York. Hey, let's move to Disneyland. But we forget about we have to spend money to get through to a toll gate and everything because we haven't got a definite goal what we're going to put there. But as soon as we can get the goal and what we want, on the way back, we can maybe stop off at Disneyland. But we're always looking for opportunities, but not having a specific target or route that we want to go into to achieve that goal. And the most important part, what I've found, is you must be specific on the amount of that amount that you want. If it's $10, it's $10. If you want $1 million, $1 million, and say, I am going to get it. So that's what I would like to suggest, Mark.
Yeah, that's such a great point too. And the definitiveness and the date shapes the thinking that goes into the manifestation of it. Because if you're thinking I'm going to make $100 versus $1 billion, it's a completely different thought pattern, right? So it comes back into the thinking part of the Think and Grow Rich. Mr. Chambers, go ahead.
Yeah. The first thing that comes up for me is intensity. So if I say I'm going to make X amount or hit a certain goal 7 days from now versus 365 days from now, I have no choice but to catapult myself into it, legs and arms and head and whatever else, and go at it like a maniac. And, you know, it might be a case that I spend 6 of those days just simply getting myself into the right vibration. And then I just allow in what was already for me anyway, with no effort of any kind. But I need to know what it is, and I need to know when I have decided that this is going to take place, because it will raise the amount of energy that's available. Certainly condense the whatever energy is required to make it happen. We'll condense it into a much shorter period of time. So typically what happens is people overestimate what they can do in 6 months. They underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So while if you stick at anything for 10 years and actually apply yourself, you'll do very well anyway. It makes sense to, in the short term, set goals for yourself so you have milestones. So when you get to those goals, you can take a breather, see the scenery, enjoy it, but not for too long, and then set the next one and just constantly be moving, because Napoleon Hill also said that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So, you know, the vision that you have for the world, as long as you're constantly unfolding that vision and you're staying true to yourself, ultimately you're going to be a living expression of that vision, you know. But you need things to work towards in order to stay focused. And, you know, if you get you get a magnifying glass and you get the sun, if you get it right, you can light stuff on fire. But if you don't have the aperture quite, or whatever the term is, quite right, it's not going to have the same effect. It won't be white hot. So
Yeah, the focal length. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Lloyd.
Just the word I was thinking of, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Michael, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to go to, I had this idea of going to Toronto, but what happened was I got a job first, so then I can get money, and then I can go next year, or maybe in February. So like, first things first, I wanted to do something that was too big, and I wasn't prepared for it yet. So I committing to a job first, and I can get that done, so I know I'm more safer, because the idea didn't make me feel safe.
Gotcha. Okay. That's
I have something on that. Just
please go ahead, Lloyd.
if we're gonna make it, I mean, I think that it's much easier to set a goal and develop your confidence from a place of abundance, because you're not putting unnecessary pressure, especially if it's like catabolic energy, which is contracting, heavy, intense energy on your goal, because you're not really opening up to what the universe might have for you, you know. So it's much easier when your financial situation is stable to set goal from a position of stability. Now, that being said, on the flip side of that, there's another way of looking at it. When you finally hit rock bottom, there's only one way to look. And the motivation to get out of there is so huge that it will drive you to do whatever it is that's necessary. But it does really depend on where your head's at. But I do think that, you know, the thing that you're going to exchange, the thing you intend to give in return for the money, is the beautiful experience that people have as they enter the cinema, because that's the job that you've chosen, is something you wanted to do. And you then receive money in return for that. And all you need to get on that flight to Toronto is money. You don't need anything. Like somebody else already figured out how to fly an airplane across the ocean, right? Somebody else already set up the 2 airports on each end. Somebody else set up the runway and, you know, flight paths and all that. All you have to do is pay the money and get on the flight. So really have to focus on what is it that I want to do and why, and well, I just need to exchange my time in this case and my passion for the thing I'm doing to receive the money in order to go to the place, right? But it depends on what the goal is. So if the goal is to go to a particular place, like go on a holiday, you just need to make the money and go on a holiday. It's not majorly challenging. If you want to build $1 billion company, it's a slightly different endeavor. So I think that as we use these 6 steps, we should incrementally make them more complex as we go through it. But in the beginning, just pick up some wins by applying this to things that are within our locus of control. I think for me anyway, this is my opinion. I recognize that there's teachers out there who think you should think as big as possible and that you should go for that. But first, establish that you can get something that's just slightly out of reach, build your confidence, become a winner in your everyday actions, and then increase the things you're after to the point where you can actually, your belief can keep up with it. And everybody that I've read about who succeeded in life and financially in this instance that I read their autobiographies, they all said, I wish I had believed bigger sooner. They all say the same thing. However, it's sometimes difficult for people to raise their level of belief to the point of where their goal is at. And in order to, the easiest way to do that is to get yourself around people that already think bigger than their own circumstances. So if you're looking around right now at home and you're watching this on the replay or whatever, and you're looking around, the people around you are the type of people, and by their actions, not by their person, not by their soul by any means. They're the types of people who, when you tell them about big ideas, they reduce it down to that's not possible, you're not that smart, and all these types of things. You're going to find this stuff much more difficult to raise your belief. But if you get around people that are encouraging you, like we've done here in a mastermind setting, for example, you're going to find it's much easier to do that. I think that's a great way of using like stepping stones to bigger and better goals. So.
Thank you, Lloyd. We're coming up. Basically, we're a little bit over time, but I want to get to everybody. Ron, you had one more thing you wanted to share, and then I'm just going to wrap up my thoughts on today's call, and then we'll convene until next week.
Okay, Mark. I just want to elaborate a bit what Lloyd said. It says we all want to be millionaires. So let's put a figure of $1 million in. So if you want to start saving at the age of 18 and you're just going to save $100, it's going to take you nearly 833 years just to get $1 million. So if you're going to save $1,000, it's going to take 83 years. If $10,000 is 8.3. But if you start working with a roadmap and say, how do I get there? Is you need to have a continuity program to make it work for you. So to use another example, Netflix went to Blockbusters. Blockbusters turned them down. So they created a continuity program by creating people to pay them on a monthly basis and using that as a bootstrap to grow their business. That's how you can start generating to your goal, by having a continuity program to make your business work. Everybody of us can do it, especially now with the internet. You can start using newsletters, using your skill sets and charging maybe $25 or $100 for your newsletters. 1,000 people, how easy it to get to your continuity program to get $1 million in a year, or that $1 billion or whatever. Is how you put your roadmap together to make your business work. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you. And yeah, you're talking about definitive plans, which we'll carry on with next week, because the last 3 steps in this, step 4, 5, and 6, are fundamental. They're critical to making this a reality. What I just wanted to wrap up on, though, today was, I touched on it a little bit the first week that we did our mastermind on this. And what I would like to sort of put out there is that you're an incredible human being. with a mind, a body, and a soul, and a consciousness. And what I think Napoleon Hill is really doing is challenging us to recognize that we are more than what we recognize. And it's not just about money. It's not just about job. It's not just about the value that we're integrating into the world. It's not just about self-limiting beliefs. It's not just about our family and our history and where we come from and all of those things. And all of that is true. But at its core, it comes down to recognizing, how is it that you are functioning in this world? What do you really believe is possible for you? And if you don't believe it's possible, you're right. And if you believe it's possible, you're right. So the question really comes down to, how are you showing up? How is this energetic being showing up? And the field that you're emanating, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the beliefs that you have in what you're capable of is guiding you through your life like an unseen hand. And you call it luck or misfortune. You call it, being extremely blessed or extremely challenged. But you have the capacity to change. And I know that is something that is a hard pill to swallow, especially if you faced a lot of adversity in your life. But I have, and I know through my own experience that it is 100% a result of the social conditioning, the programming, the family history, the genetic background. All of that stuff is why it occurred, and I have the power to change it. So when we're talking about Napoleon Hill's riches here, he's giving us a blueprint to make this shift. And it's not just for money. It's physical health, it's mental health, it's your thought world, it's your family, it's your relationships, it's your career, it's your finances, it's romance and intimacy. It's all these different aspects of riches that you get to define the exact amount of what it is you want to experience. And he's giving you a blueprint here to embody that in these different areas. So I just want to put it out there that don't just get lost in on the money factor, because although money is important, it's not everything. You don't get to bring it with you when you leave, right? But you do get to bring those memories of and how you impacted the people around you and how you impacted the world around you and how much you loved and were loved by others. You get to bring that with you, right? So that can be in the form of money. And again, I don't want to poo-poo on that at all. But I really would love to just put it out there and just wrap up today's call on recognizing that you are incredible. Every single person here, you have a mind, you have a body and a soul, and you can change your neurosynaptic programming wherever you come from, whatever your background is, whatever your history, whatever your family lineage is, whatever it is, you have the capacity to change it. And Napoleon Hill is giving us the 6 steps to do that. All right. So
Mark, we're all our own version of Disney. Some of us haven't discovered what that is yet.
There you go. That's another way of putting it. Absolutely. You are the hero of your own story. And I think like to the point that you were bringing up earlier, Michael, about the movie, what is your character? And what is this character in your story want to experience? Right? And you're a hero. You can be Iron Man, you could be whatever you want to be, right? You can be whatever it is. But the point is what is your story? Right? And Napoleon Hill's given us a blueprint to write down the character of your life. And I would only challenge you to extend this beyond money into the 9 key areas of your life, right? Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs about who you are, you know, the types of relationships you want to have, family, career, romance, intimacy, or spiritual relationship. Like, who are you? Right. And so anyways, I just thank you so much for everybody being here. Mr. Chambers, you get the last word.
Yeah, and just finally, it's probably worth mentioning, if your life is a movie, which for the purpose of this analogy, let's say it is, why are you not playing the lead role? Why are you playing a supporting character? We need to be considering, are we actually the main character in the movie that we're making? Because we're both the director and the actor and the producer of the movie. But I'm quite confident that in most cases, for people who haven't done their work and who haven't got, you know, done a lot of personal development, they're quite likely not the main character. And I know when I first looked at this idea and I entertained this analogy, I was like, why am I not the main character in my story? Why are all these people's opinions important? Why are all these characters' opinions somehow more important than me creating a vision for myself and then acting on that vision as if it's real? Right? And in the beginning, I didn't have an answer for that. But I did recognize I was not the one who was the main character. And ultimately, eventually, I became the main character. But, you know, you got to ask yourself, if you're watching this as a recording, are you the main character? Or are you just playing a supporting role? Are you allowing someone else to be the director, the producer, and you're not? You're like an extra somewhere in the background. You know, it's an important question to ask yourself. So anyway,
can I say something quickly? Would that be okay? Really quickly, because I just found that interjection, you know, like it's just kind of funny. And I think useful because it represents resistance, right? So we're out there living our life, we're creating our magic, or, you know, living into our vision. And all of a sudden a group shows up and they go, well. Right? And, oh, well, you know, everybody has, you know, has a voice. Okay. And they choose to express it however they choose to express it. But that's how I experience that. It's like the resistance that shows up in our life, right? Sometimes it's created by us. Sometimes it's inserted by other people, because it will happen.
Yeah. That's huge, Wanda. You know, like when I first started reading this book, and I was reading it on my lunch in the building where I was working back when I still was an employee, the looks that people were giving me when they saw the title were just like people who I didn't know, who I kind of randomly see around. It's like sniggering, and occasionally come over and go, when are you gonna make your first million? Type of, like, actually engaging me solely to take the piss, which is kind of interesting. So you got to be mindful of your audience. And so if you do have big goals where you're at the center of the movie that you're making, people are going to have an opinion on that. And they may choose to, because possibly in their own life, they're not the main character. They think, why should you be? And sometimes that's where I think a lot of the resistance comes from that. The other thing is, in order for, sorry, Mark, just bear with me here. They may think that we're all in the same movie and that only one person gets to be the main character. And they're sure as hell not going to let it be you, because they want it to be them, because they think we're in conflict and competition. What they don't realize is that everybody's making a movie. You can play any part you like. And there's nothing anyone can do about what part you choose, because it doesn't even interfere with them at all. You know, in fact, if anything, it could potentially build them up. right?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to this as well. The one thing that I've learned from connecting with people from all over the world, we're in NG. I think we have members in about 84 countries now, all over the world, and there's a lot of different people have different backgrounds, different histories, different spiritual convictions, etc. And I think that, and some obviously none at all, but I think that there's a huge part of the world that's operating from this perspective of conflict and competition, right? Because that is really their everyday lives, right? And we are really, really blessed to live in a part in the world where we can actually set up a spirit of collaboration and cooperation, and it isn't centered around conflict and competition, which is, I think, in no small part why things like what we witnessed just this last week here with SpaceX landing this rocket, on this huge tower and this incredible feat of engineering. None of that is possible without collaboration, cooperation, mutual aid, a spirit of competition, a spirit of healthy competition, right? Versus conflict competition, right? It's inspiration versus tearing people down. And I think I would just love to end this live stream as an invitation, just like we did last time with all those individuals that jumped in last week. An invitation to say that, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to transcend your current circumstance, so you don't have to feel like you got to waste somebody's time by jumping in and you think it's cool to hack a feed. This, none of us really care, and it's kind of irrelevant in the big scheme of things. It just really is a reflection of those individuals and their state of consciousness, which really everybody here on the call already knows. So I want to play us out with an intro video to Noble Goldman, a little quick 4-minute one, and I'll post the link in the description down below for everybody who may want to join. And I'm going to put an invitation out to those individuals that keep hacking our call, without bringing anything positive, that maybe just maybe they open their minds a little bit and realize this might be an incredible opportunity for them to learn and grow and become better human beings fundamentally. I just have to give me a quick second here. Just got to optimize for my audio. All right.
That whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, regardless of how many times you may have failed in the past or how lofty your aims and hopes may be.
For a moment, consider the things your mind has brought you. Everything you have, your work, your relationship with your family and others, your philosophy of life, all come to you as a result of using your mind. Now consider the estimate made by experts. You have probably been operating on less than 10% of your mental capacities, much less. Neurological research at the UCLA Brain Research Institute points to enormous abilities latent in everyone by suggesting an incredible hypothesis. The ultimate creative capacity of the human brain may be, for all practical purposes, they pointed out, infinite.
this principle of success is called the Mastermind principle. An understandable definition of the mastermind is this. It consists of two or more people who work in perfect harmony for the attainment of a definite purpose. First of all, it is the principle through which you may borrow and use the education, the experience, the influence, and perhaps the capital of other people in carrying out your own plans in life. It is the principle through which you can accomplish in 1 year more than you could accomplish without it in a lifetime if you depended entirely upon your own efforts for success. And I have heard well-informed Bible students say that the first known application of the mastermind was that which existed between the Nazarene and his 12 disciples